Welcome, everyone, to Charts Free webinar series. Today, we have Bob DUPREY, founder of Restaurant Playbooks, and Angelina Sabatini, director of training at Ford's Garage, and they are going to be presenting on compliance training. Welcome, Bob and Angelina.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Hi. I hope everyone's having a great week so far. My name's Angelina Sabatini. Thank you, Tara, for the introduction. I am the director of training for Ford's Garage. We are based here in Tampa, Florida. We have 21 locations. We actually just opened our 21st location this Monday here in Florence, Kentucky. So our first in the state of Kentucky. I'm really excited to partner with Bob and Restaurant Playbooks to be a part of today's webinar and just share our thoughts and things that we're doing industry-wide that we can share with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Angelina. Well, Angelina and I were meant to actually present this as a live session in Austin last summer. So sorry if anyone was there and weren't able to attend. I ended up getting COVID and called it all off, but we're so happy to be here today. We didn't change anything really about what we planned to present, but there are a couple of additions, which I'll kind of refer to a little bit later in some things that have changed along the way from when we were going to present before. So again, my background, I'm Bob DUPREY, founder of Restaurant Playbooks. We specialize in offering off-the-shelf content and custom development services specifically for the restaurant industry. But I've got about 20 years that I worked in the e-learning industry across all different types of industries, some of the biggest QSRs, but also all kinds of Fortune 500 companies. And so my perspective on compliance and e-learning comes from a broad spectrum of industries and what folks have been doing or moving towards over the years. So I'm kind of bringing that into the mix of how we're looking at things and what's worked. And some of the recommendations that we're making today are based on what I've seen proven in other companies that have taken this approach. So thanks a lot for joining. And we're all trainers here, right? So we know this is, for most of you folks, or many of you folks coming in, it's after lunchtime, the graveyard shift, right? So I want to do something that kind of gets our attention and gets us thinking about things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer a $15 Amazon card. And the winner of that card is going to be the person that can recognize an image that I'm going to put up on the screen. So you're going to have 10 seconds. We're going to count down 10 seconds to actually look at the image and see if you recognize it. And if you do recognize it, put the name of it in the chat. The first person to do it in 10 seconds, I'll send that $15 Amazon card. So get your chat window ready. We're going to count down from 8, 5, 3, 2, 1, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tara, do we have a winner?
No, nobody had an answer.
Okay, well, good stuff. This is even better because we're gonna introduce some things that's new to folks today. This is the window for ChatGPT, AI, open source AI that just became available to the public for free just before Thanksgiving. Now, this is not a webinar on AI or ChatGPT, but we're actually ourselves looking at how can we use this new powerful tool to help us to develop engaging e-learning content, or can we even use this tool? And this is a question I think a lot of you are going to start asking yourself in the future. So let's just take a look at these poll questions. Tara, can you put up the poll? So the question is what stage you at with ChatGPT? What is it? Never heard of it? In research mode? Or you're actually using it in a project at work? So we'll take about 20 seconds for you to tell me, for you to answer the poll.
And Bob, I do have to mention, somebody just pointed out that the chat was disabled for some reason. So we didn't get an accurate answer.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. It looks like everybody has answered. Almost everyone has answered I'm going to end the poll in a couple of seconds. Okay.
Well, okay, so do we have one person that said they're using it effectively?
The chat function was just disabled for people to say if they knew what that screen was. I'm going to try to enable it right now, but right now the poll has just been run and the results are showing.
Okay, the results are showing. So we've got 1 out of 38 using it effectively. 6 are in research mode, and the vast majority are what is it? So this is great. We're not again, we're not doing a Chat GPT webinar here, but what I wanted to do is kind of introduce some things for you all to think about and inspire you, hopefully, to want to go and find out what it is and start researching it. All right. So I don't know how much or how many of you remember the days of videotape training and what that was like when we started using computers for training, right? I remember this was in the mid-90s. We had just developed a computer-based training program for restaurant wait staff. I was working as a consultant in the UK, and it was very early days, let's put it that way. So I was invited to go and speak in universities about this new computer-based training way of teaching people using a computer, various things. And really the feedback I got at the time was, there's no way you can use a computer program to teach people how to work, how to do anything in a restaurant, how to do customer service, how to do soft skills. And there was a lot of pushback. And I'm kind of feeling like this is what we're going to go through here with this new technology. There's a little bit of fear. Is this going to take our jobs? No, it isn't. We take the view that this is another tool, just like e-learning was another tool in a trainer's toolkit to deliver engaging e-learning experiences. So we're kind of looking at it as a superpower, or potentially another superpower. So what we're asking ourselves here at Restaurant Playbooks is, can we use this AI in its current state to help us to deliver more engaging and effective learning experiences? So this does kind of relate to our topic, because that's what we're trying to do. And we want to look at all the tools that we can use to do it. So Tara had mentioned we're going to stay on for questions after the call. So if anyone's interested, I've kind of put the last 10 minutes. So the last at the 50-minute point on the hour, I'll stay on and talk about what we're discovering with AI. There's a lot of information out there about ChatGPT and how to use it. And there's a lot of good learning folks, L&D leaders, working on this. And there's a lot of places where you can go to get this information. So I'd be happy to share some of that with you. So in some ways, I'm considering myself a guinea pig in how we're using AI, because I'm in no way an expert, and I don't really think there are that many experts out there at this stage anyway. But what you're seeing here is an image that was developed using AI, another free tool from ChatGPT, DALL-E 2, where you can pretty much make up whatever image you want and it'll pump it out. Now, this isn't a perfect image, but at least no guinea pigs were harmed in the making of this presentation. So let's get rolling on that note. So Angelina, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us kicked off.
Great. Thanks, Bob. So when we talk about compliance training from our industry standpoint, and when you hear that term, what does that really mean to you all? So if you could share some thoughts in the chat and let us know, what is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear compliance training? Is it positive? Is it neutral? Is it negative? We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Even just the term compliance training.
We got a lot of neutral, negative, boring. Okay, great. Dry, negative, or neutral. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. And now, what about your audience? What do you think, as trainers, we have to consider our audience, right? And how we're going to develop content for our audience. So a lot of that involves developing a persona for the audience. If you were to think about, if you were to kind of put your mind in your employees' kind of mindset, how do you think they view compliance training? So we're going to open up this poll, Tara. Do you think they view it as really important and vital to their development, or tedious and boring? Someone put that in the chat. Or even irrelevant.
Yeah, and even in the chat, it's showing, they have to do it, just mandated, right?
Awesome. Great. So that's why everyone's here, right? So we're going to cover some ideas and some thoughts of how we can potentially address that. So kind of a disclaimer. I said we didn't change the presentation at all, and we didn't. But what I thought was, well, let's see what ChatGPT has to say about some of the topics we're covering. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read this whole thing to you, but you could easily glance at it and see that this was something where I put this question into this tool. Why is most compliance training considered dry and boring? And within about 3 seconds, it pumped out this answer. And some of this is what we're going to cover today. It's mandatory, not seen as relevant. It's there to meet certain regulations and so on. So like I said, I'm not here to dwell on what this is saying here. It's more about how, what the kind of outputs you're getting. So what do you think, Angelina?
Yeah, so in our industry today and how we think about compliance training and where we're at with our team members and coming out of COVID and all the information that we have to share and get across, across restaurants and all brands, what is it that we really think needs to happen to change and really go forward with our future and being able to get this information, make it engaging and relevant for our team? And how do you think we can do that today? So we'd love to hear your thoughts.
All these images, with exception of Rodin Thinker on the left, was generated in AI. So as me and my team started playing around with this, it just struck us that this is the world that your employees are living in now, where you can make any kind of image you want. It's mind-bending, really, where this is going to go. And our feeling is we got to get on this. We got to get on this train, because if we want to deliver engaging experiences in the way that they're consuming content in the outside world, we need to think about how we're going to do that. So this is DALL-E 2, and you can see I'm an amateur. So look at the quality of some of these images. DALL-E 2 can actually output incredibly stunning images, actually. But for what it's worth, I got a guy with a mask and a snorkel when I was actually asking for a VR headset. So that's kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly of what you're going to see today is of using these tools. So what are we seeing in the chat? Any comments?
Right now, it looks like no comments have come through.
Did you have anything else you wanted to say on that, Angelina?
Yeah, I think we, as everybody shared in the chat and the Q&A earlier, as well as the poll, we really think it's, checking a box, or it's mandatory. It's something to help from, a regulations standpoint. And how do we make it engaging and interactive and different, where it's all about behavioral changes. So I think as we look in an industry standpoint of where we're going, where we are today and where we need to go future state, we really need to talk about compliance more so from a behavioral change and the impact that we want to see in our people, and really leading with people first. And then I think the compliance and the rest of the knowledge will flow through. But there's definitely different ways that we can engage our people today than we've done in the past. And tools like this AI will help us get there.
Yeah, and you're opening up new locations at a rapid pace at Ford's, and you're seeing all kinds of new folks enter the workforce. We'll get into that in a second, but I think that's what makes it even more compelling, because if you look at Miriam's definition of compliance, I don't see how any of this is going to fly with today's entering the workforce kind of folks, this kind of mentality. So it really is more about a change. It's a change in mindset from our perspective too, is how we think about it. Because how we think about it is going to be, it's going to be impacting how we actually present it and promote it moving forward. So for the purpose of today's conversation, let's just focus in one specific area. Compliance. When you talk about compliance, the challenge is it's everything from safe food and alcohol service to workplace safety, OSHA, all the topics there. I'm thinking that we really want to focus here on the HR compliance type of topics. As Angelina said about driving behaviors, if there's one area we really, aside, well, they're all important, but if there's one area we really want to be driving behaviors, it's in preventing workplace harassment, understanding bias, encouraging diversity and inclusion in the workplace, supporting it, and the behaviors around those, which can be in some ways some big behavior changes for a lot of folks. So that's what we're going to focus on, because it's work. It's extra work to do what we're going to present. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. There's a difference between just deploying a course and tracking completions versus doing some extra elements to actually drive behaviors, because most content that you get, or a lot of the content that you get in the off-the-shelf world, doesn't take it as far as you need it to take it in your specific business in the way that we're going to recommend. So I think, Angelina, you did touch on this, but did you have anything else to add or on this topic?
No, I think I shared it a little earlier.
Yeah, so these are the desired results. We want to move beyond completion, even move beyond knowledge, and really drive towards behaviors. Because it's not just what your employees know that matters, it's what they do. And I heard this many times back working for some of these other organizations, these other Fortune 500 companies. They're like, it doesn't matter that they took the course. We need to make sure that they're doing the right things in the workplace and that they know how to do it on the fly, that it isn't something where they've got to go back and figure it out, or what are the rules on this or something like this. It's part of their behaviors that they know how to react in certain situations. So here we go. It's time to move from checking the box to developing behaviors. We're going to, I guess it's one small step for man and one giant leap for astronaut and horse on the moon. All right, so Angelina, you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing out there in your new openings and some of the trends and the type of expectations that your new hires, your new employees that you're bringing on board. What's that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier in the start of our call, we just opened in Florence, Kentucky, our first location for 2023, and we are about to open a total of 5 restaurants in 19 weeks. So after we leave here in Florence, Kentucky, we've got a little bit of a break for about 2 weeks before we head off to the next opening. So a lot of growth happening in the industry. And what we're really seeing, or what I'm personally seeing throughout this experience, is we have a lot of first-time industry team members joining us. So people who have never worked in the industry before, people ranging with limited experience to a lot of experience, which is normal for us. And then really what our team members are telling us is really they want a customizable experience. They want it to be authentic, engaging, something that they can do on their own and really their own pace. And so really, how do we create training that they feel like it values them, something that they're going to learn and be able to take with them? We hear a lot from a new hire how different this experience is, right, when they come on board to a new restaurant opening versus other places they've worked in the past. And so really just getting to hear their feedback. I think my current tagline is feedback is our friend. And so what I'm finding is this is the first time team members really feel that they're being heard in a training space from where they've come from, either our competitors or from other industry or non-restaurant industry jobs. So it's really interesting to see that they want to provide feedback, they want to engage, they want to make the program better themselves, and they want to be able to be a part of the process, which is incredible.
Does this resonate with folks out there? Does anyone care to enter into chat? Anything else that you're hearing, or do you agree with what you're seeing here, or are you having a similar experience to what Angelina's experiencing out there? We have a few chats.
Looks like we have a lot of agreeing. Short attention spans, understanding the why.
Yeah.
Yes, the days of long classroom training at a new restaurant opening just does not exist anymore.
Right.
What's the important? Why does it benefit the team member? How does it impact them?
More space for feedback. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Julius, that finding in a fast-paced environment, it can be very challenging. How do you fit training in, or the amount of training that we're used to from our past experiences?
Yeah. All right. So this seems to validate a lot of what I'm saying for sure, and what you're saying. And like everyone that's commenting anyway seems to be in a similar kind of boat in what they're seeing. All right, so thanks for that. So what we're talking about here is a bit of a different, perhaps a different framework for you for developing engaging e-learning. And this applies not just to compliance, of course, but compliance seems to be the one that typically doesn't get to this level. So just to let you know, we're going to share after the webinar a template, a customizable template that allows you to kind of assess the content that you're currently delivering or experiencing against the framework. And then the flip side of that is how you actually can utilize the framework, some questions, some prompts for you to be able to utilize the framework in how you deploy it. So everything we're going to cover now is going to be, there's going to be a takeaway after the webinar that you'll have access to. So the first part of the framework, or let's do it at a high level. What does the framework include? Number one, we look at instructional design. Number two, we're going to look at mixed media design. Number three, what we call the 3 Rs. So anyone familiar with Benjamin Bloom knows that that's an instructional design process. For those of you that don't or might not be familiar with Bloom's, we in our development, we use Bloom's and Kirkpatrick typically in the development of the content, the off-the-shelf content that we develop, and it typically ranges in the levels of 1, 2, and 3. So if you look at remember, that's level 1, understand is level 2, apply is level 3, Bloom's level 3 learning. So what part of the framework we recommend is if you want to drive behaviors, you have to go up to level 3. That doesn't mean every piece of content needs to have it up to a level 3. For example, in our courses, we develop level 1 and 2 courses, and then we have what we call skill builders scenarios, which are your level 3 content that can be deployed at a separate time and over time. So really what we're saying is, in order to kind of get to behaviors, if that's what we want to do, we have to have an instructional approach that kind of supports the development of behaviors and the reinforcement of the development of behaviors. And how we do that, the tools that we use are anything like scenarios, simulations, complex questions, reflection. We could do a whole webinar on, Bloom's and utilizing Bloom's and instructional design. That's not what this is about, but just to introduce the concept if it's not something familiar to you. And if it is, that's kind of what we shoot for, is that level 3. If you think about training completion, which is where so much compliance content really is, I kind of say that that's a 0.5 on the Bloom scale of levels. It doesn't even rise to a level 1. So in some ways, there's a long ways to go. There's lots of opportunity. So again, what does ChatGPT think about using Bloom's taxonomy? And it talks about critical thinking, problem-solving skills, allowing a learner to have a deeper understanding and retention of the material, as well as the ability to apply it in real-world scenarios. So I'd say pretty good answer, ChatGPT. It's not perfect, but it's pretty close. So mixed media. So here's the second leg is how are we going to deploy content in a way that's going to grab and keep their attention? And there's lots of stats out there right now about how much people are consuming video. And your employees that are coming into your work, everyone is consuming a ton of video. So we take the position that if you want to grab and keep their attention, you better be using video of some type, whether it's shooting it on your iPhone. It doesn't have to be video production quality. Doing some green screen, which is pretty straightforward these days. I'm on a green screen right now with a webcam. Using animations. Animations can be very powerful for delivering complex situations in a non-triggering way. Sometimes literal videos could be very triggering for your employees, actually, and go too far. And we can use animations in a way that we can bring things into a virtual environment that's a little less so. So we have a lot of control over that. And then images, graphic design, photos, and hey, what about DALL-E 2 now, using AI to develop custom images that support a message? So what we try to do is we mix it all up. We mix up video with animations, with real backgrounds, with virtual backgrounds, and we do it really, the driving factor there is to drive and keep engagement. So as we kind of look at, and here's another one with ChatGPT, why are animations effective for developing engaging learning? Visual appeal, interactivity, attention grabbing, memory retention, aesthetically pleasing. There's all kinds of reasons. So my experience is that folks either love or hate video, but a lot of times it seems to be a personal choice. And what I would urge you to do is think about your learners, your persona of your learners, and what they're used to, as opposed to, you know, what you kind of feel comfortable with. Now, having said that, it has to fit your corporate culture. And I remember back in the day, I don't know how many folks got involved with a tool called CodeBaby, which was a software tool that allowed you to create avatars. And this was somewhere around 2010, 2015. You could go into a company's head office, film their CEO and whoever was going to be in that video and create an avatar of those people. And then you'd create an e-learning course with those avatars. Looking back, they were kind of creepy, really, really, those avatars. But people either loved them or they hated them. And I kind of feel like there's that situation with animations now, but I think animations are different because there's more dimensions to what you can do with them. CodeBaby was just trying to be a human computer version of a human, basically. So I just kind of urge you, whatever you do when you're thinking about the media that you're using, is how to mix it up. So an example of this is, if you're using off-the-shelf content and it doesn't use these components, then my suggestion is think about ways you can augment this content and drip it out over time. And we'll talk about what type of content you're going to augment it with. But I just would like to say, I wouldn't like to look at it like you're constrained to the limits of the off-the-shelf courses that you're using. And actually, it's important not to be constrained by those if we want to drive behaviors and kind of tick the boxes of the 3 R's that we're talking about. So thinking about the mixed media and how we develop content. Now, this is the same for how you can develop content or thinking about develop content, but also how, if you work with a custom vendor, how to direct them to develop your content and how to maybe redirect how you think about how you develop your content. So for us, how we develop content is we want maximum versatility for the content that we develop. So what that means is we develop our microlearning courses in Storyline 360. We use industry standard tools to develop microlearning. So, and we do that in custom too, because that way it's easier for a client to take the files that we created and be able to update that themselves. So those microlearning courses comprise of videos, which are animations or live coach videos, green screen videos, your iPhone videos, whatever they are. That course comprises of those videos because we're focused on delivering video as much as we can, getting away from images and text wherever possible. So now those are separate learning assets. If you develop them in the way that they can stand alone on their own and be used within the microlearning course, now you've multiplied the versatility of those videos you've developed by maybe 3, 4, or 5, because now those videos can be used in a microlearning course. They can be used as reinforcement that you can drip out over time. They can be used as a performance support tool. So you put tags on the video. So if someone needs to go and just see a quick video on lifting for safety, they could just, if you've got the platform that enables that, they could just search for that video, watch that video without having to go all the way back into the e-learning course to see that particular video. So it's a it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about it, but it gives you more versatility. And even then, if you're thinking about developing video and even green screen video, you do it in a way where you're layering green screen over an image or a video that is easy to update, as opposed to filming the video actually in the location. Because once you've got that location and that video, that could get dated very quickly, but the video might not get dated very quickly of the person, but the background could get changed very quickly. So it gives you more versatility in how you think about developing things. So Angelina, you've gone through some of this metamorphosis. You started using our micro-learning courses, and now you're starting to use our videos. You want to explain how that's working out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we started off with one idea of how to use the program through SCORM and through a traditional LMS. And so now we're looking at how do we re-engage, redeploy, and engage our team members a little differently. And after some deep diving and some thinking with all these new restaurant openings coming up, we realized that the video component is just really something that we can touch on. We can share in a different avenue, in a different way, and really be able to engage our team members. And even if they've seen the video in the past, redeploying the same video without having to add all the text content and things like that really allows our managers to go back in and pinpoint certain things or certain behaviors. So instead of having to share an entire SCORM course or package, we're really looking at now getting really granular and what can we share and certain components, and how do we deploy it in a way that is a little more digestible for our team members and really engaging to exactly what that person needs, and really creating a more organic, authentic, individualized feel for our team members.
Great, thanks for that. And when you think of it, this kind of makes me think about the comment that one of the person put in chat about who has the time, the time to do this. And this kind of gives you a more flexibility in how you can drip information out over time. If you really want to drive behaviors, this is not a one-shot deal where you deliver information and then that's it. It is now someone's behavior. To drive behaviors, you have to, from a brain science point of view, you're trying to drive grooves and neural pathways that cause someone to develop this as a way to automatically act or react over time. And that's done little and often over time. So you think about dripping out this content, and it's called, the technical term, then one of the technical terms is the drip effect, right? But there are instructional papers and studies about how the drip approach of very little content, micro content over a period of time is better at driving behaviors over the long term than one training event ever will be. So this kind of gives you more flexibility. So what I'm saying is, as you're thinking about, as you're developing content or augmenting content that exists, you could use this approach of having different media that you can bring to the table, and you can have maximum versatility of that media. As we're developing the video media, we're actually replicating in text format the microlearning courses. So where there was a quiz, there's quiz in text format. So we're kind of cataloging it in a way so you can take those videos and you could actually rebuild a course using less of the content, but still having the prompts for you. And I would suggest that that's how you would look at it too. You'd want to have everything so it could stand on its own. You'd want to catalog it so you know how you can use it and where you can use it in different ways. And if you want to build it into a microlearning course, you can do that. But if you have a LXP, for example, or a platform that is more video presentation focused, then you just use it in that format. So some food for thought there. Anything else, Angelina, to touch on there, or are we good?
Yeah, no, I think that was a majority of it. And I think too, when we have some flexibility in how we use the tools, and it's not just a one-stop shop where it just is what it is, where working with you and your team has allowed us some flexibility to look at the content a little differently and really break it up. I think it also gives a sense of ownership to our leadership team and to our managing partners, as well as our managers, to really engage in the content and be able to interact with our team and talk about it. It's not just, they're getting a report that says, these 5 people haven't finished, just get it done. It's really like, hey, let's talk about what you've learned, or why is this important? And so we're really being able to get back to what our first focus is people first, and why it impacts them, and how do we set them up for success today and for their future, whether they're with us a year or 10 years.
Thanks, Angela. And I'll say one more point on this. If you're using off-the-shelf content, ideally it's microlearning, right? So even with that, without having to shoot other videos or anything like that, there's still a lot of folks I've not seen, in my experience, that are actually thinking about how they can top and tail that content with their business-specific content. So you can still use that course and actually think about developing more situational or role-specific follow-up activity, interaction scenarios, quizzes, whatever, that kind of build on that content. So the 3 R's: relevant, relatable, and reflection. So what do we mean by relevant? So ideally, we want to move from, hey, you have to do this, this is some legal requirement, to, hey, this is really, we believe in providing an emotionally and physically safe environment for our teams, and this is how we do it. We're going to help you in this, in X, Y, and Z way. And this especially applies to the HR compliance content that we talked about. There can be a much better communication and kind of shift in how we think about how this content does support culture and values, as opposed to, oh, we need to do this. And again, like I was just saying, add context to your off-the-shelf courses, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. Again, and from the point of view of, from an instructional design point of view, we always think of focusing on the need to know and remove the nice to know. And the way we think about it from an instructional point of view is, think about the business impact that we're trying to achieve. Think about the behaviors that will drive that business impact. Think about the knowledge that will drive the behaviors. Think about the information that will drive the knowledge. Take out anything that doesn't kind of fit in those buckets, and actually strip everything else out. So, all the superfluous stuff. So it allows you to get, that's one of the things that we use to drive towards microlearning and how we consider microlearning. We typically focus on 2 to 3 key learning points, and that's what makes up a microlearning course, not because it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes or 7 minutes or some arbitrary number. It's more about how much we're expecting someone to learn within that chunk of learning. So relatable, the content is laser targeted for the learner, their industry, certainly our industry, and role specific. So if it's something a manager that is the kitchen manager deals with, or the kitchen team, back of house, heart of house works with, make sure the scenarios you develop, the situations, the questions, everything are related very specifically to what they're going through. Recent. There's certainly a lot of off-the-shelf content out there, whether, a lot of it isn't industry, most of it isn't industry specific, right? But there's a lot of content out there that was developed 5, 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, even 3 years ago. I'd argue in the HR compliance world, and some of these topics, we're dealing with, things are evolving in the workplace that people weren't necessarily exposed to 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we need to make sure that the scenarios that they're going through are things that are happening to them in the real life right now. So whether that's polling and really getting close to the business and really figuring out, what are these folks going through? What are these scenarios that they're dealing with, as opposed to sometimes some of the tried and true ones that are in a lot of off-the-shelf content. So that's what, relatable means to us, is we got to keep it fresh and recent. Reflection is really all about, how can you ask the learner to think about what they're learning and apply it to their situation, synthesize the information, take charge of their learning, and understand why they need to apply it, how it's important to them, the with them, right? What's in it for them, and how they interact with their teams. So that's kind of at a high level what we're talking about. So we talk about 3 R's. We talk about instructional design, and we talk about media design and approach. So that kind of wraps it up. What I did do is I asked ChatGPT to kind of weigh in this too, but I'll put that off until the last 10 minutes. If anyone wants to stay on and talk about, what we're kind of discovering with AI and some things that we can share, we'll share that then. But I'd say we're at the 40-minute mark. So what do you think? Should we open it up for questions?
Absolutely. I've got a couple that have come in on the side. And anyone who has any additional questions, if you want to just throw them into the chat, we will read them. But the first one was, do all compliance topics need to focus on developing behaviors?
You want to start or you want me to start? Shall I start with that, Angelina?
Yeah, that would be great. Go ahead, Bob.
I'd say no. I mean, like we said earlier, that I'd say it would be a great start to make sure whatever your HR type topics, preventing workplace harassment, whether if you have a diversity program or understanding bias, those kind of topics, drugs and alcohol in the workplace, that's where I would start. Now, does it make sense for all content to be driving behaviors? Absolutely. But if those topics aren't kind of getting to this level 3 that we discussed, then I say that would be, if I were to prioritize, that would be where I would start. Or if you're seeing a very specific issue within the business, right? So people are slipping off ladders or, doing some unsafe acts on a regular basis, and things are happening. So of course it's driven by where are the greatest needs in the business, but all that being equal, it'd be one of those two where you'd start to focus. Angelina, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the content, how it needs to be broken out for your team. So I don't think it necessarily has to start with the behavior, but I think the final impact is that we want it to be something that it's not a one time of the year. We have to do it because it's March. It's really about how does that content impact us on a day-to-day basis, and how do we apply it to the role that we're in today?
That's a great point. You just made me think. A lot of the companies that I worked, outside the restaurant space with this, we had a 1-year plan for any one topic. This wasn't just kind of like, and I don't mean a 1-year plan, we're going to do this in December. I mean, for this topic, we're going to think about how we're going to prepare our managers to coach to this over the course of the year, the kind of questions we're going to expect them to ask, how we're going to deliver e-learning content based on this around the year. Are we going to do a workshop, X, Y, and Z? This was a strategy that goes over a period of time to develop behaviors, not a kind of, well, this is the topic, let's roll it out in December type of thing.
Okay, a second question is, how can we validate the behavior change is caused by training?
All right, so I'll take that first. So there's a number of ways. A couple of the more straightforward ways is, one is you can, well, both of them really rely on some kind of observation, right? So you could have an observation checklist where you're actually looking, you've got someone that actually 3 times a week, I'm going to go out into the dining room and I'm going to look for these behaviors, and not even who's doing it, but are you seeing these behaviors demonstrated on a regular basis? So not making it personal. Or are you seeing the behaviors that you're trying to change happen? So it could be a very high level, go out there, identify what the behaviors are, and just go out and observe. So that's one level of it. And then the other level of it is, yes, you could get more specific where X folks went through certain training, what these are the behaviors that we're expecting to drive, and we're going to observe for these over time. And the other is a control group, where you might have 3 restaurants where you deliver this training and 3 restaurants where you don't. And so what's different? Might be some factors that are different, who's the manager and that kind of thing. There might be some other factors, of course, but you're trying to isolate as much as possible what might have impacted the behaviors. And a lot of the LMSs now and LXPs have some great tools for you to kind of capture that or create a process to do that right within the platforms. I know we partner with a number of them. So Angelina, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think specifically to what the way we're doing it today at Ford's, as an example would be, we're really asking more engaging questions. And so how do we capture that feedback through an LMS or any other learning platform out there, and really just being able to ask questions, but giving it some space as well. So, that 30, 60, 90-day check-in for a new hire, we prompt certain questions that can come up so that we can just make sure the knowledge and retention is there, and that we're revisiting that behavior or the expectation that we're looking for.
All right, the next question is, how do you balance the need to know with the desires of the learners to understand why?
I'll let you start with that one, Angelina.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bob. I think I think really it's being able to start with the why and then being able to present the knowledge, and then how does it relate back? So, obviously how something relates to a front of house team member might be very different than a heart of house team member. And so we really have to, make sure the examples are relevant to the team in the way that they're learning and for their specific position and role. And, something that we've even gone through with restaurant playbooks is how do we even engage it from a leadership development standpoint, right? What is the manager focus, and how do the managers provide the why, and even providing the managers the why? Because I think a lot of the times they're just told that they have to do something, especially from an operation DO level. It's like, we just have to get it done. It's just the industry we're in. We move really fast all the time. And the decisions that we make can be very positive or very detrimental. And so really making sure that we're engaging from the highest level of explaining the why and that impact, because I've noticed doing a gap analysis that even our managers don't understand the why. So really being able to start there and then moving into the team member. But I think it really starts with letting them know, hey, this is why we're doing it. This is the impact that it has on you. And just really having, a direct or candid approach has really been something that has been beneficial for us.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, the reality is, I think if most people had the time to kind of figure it out, especially on the manager side, right, they would be able to figure it out. It's just that everyone is just so, crazy busy, right? And it's like, what we found is, it's not that managers wouldn't know how to do this without our help, but their bandwidth is just so limited. So we try to get them to a point where they can grasp it very quickly. If they had the time to do it, they would, but we help them to figure out what they need to grasp and how they need to communicate it. We try to do some of the heavy lifting for them, not because they can't do it. It's just because of all the other demands on their time. They just don't have the bandwidth to do it. So it's how you can prepare folks to, on a face-to-face basis, because the why is different for everybody, right? So you can't just put that in a course and it applies to everyone that takes the course. But that's where the kind of the human interaction and the blended approach to how you deploy this it matters. And even preparing the managers to look out for that. And how do we kind of figure out how we get to the WIFM for folks? So it's kind of preparing them to think that they have to. And like Angelina said, you do have to spell things out for everyone, because they might not necessarily think about it. The same goes for not just what's in it for them, but even the transferable skills. They're learning incredible transferable skills, but most folks don't really appreciate the value of the skills they're getting. And they so appreciate when you actually help them point them out, because maybe they haven't been in the working world that long and they don't know that these skills are usually valuable, and the things that they're learning, the education they're getting, is going to stand them in a really good place as they kind of move through the workforce.
Okay, we're at 15 minutes and we have 2 compliance related questions that I'm going to deal with first so that we can end the recording and then go to the chat GPT and things if you want.
Okay, sure.
The first one is, can you focus on the really big items in a compliance course to keep it shorter, engaging, and reference the full policy so people could review it if needed? Does that still count as a compliance course?
What do you think, Angelina? I'll let you weigh in again as someone that's doing this every day.
Yeah, so to answer the policy piece, the policies we always have available and accessible to our team members to go back and reference. I think there's a lot of content that gets digestible. I know depending just on your legal team or your attorneys, they may, depending on the state or regulation, may just tell you something a little different. So it's not a one size fits all in that reference. But what we're finding is that we can get really specific and we can shorten the content a lot as long as we're providing the meat and potatoes. And so from a legal standpoint and all that has worked out in our favor, that we can do some really bite-sized pieces and still get them the content. And then, being able to provide them access to those policies outside of their just initial onboarding process is something that has made our legal advisement feel good about, maybe the way that we design our content today versus, a full SCORM course in the past.
Okay, and the last question we have is, we already have our compliance training plan and budget set for this year. Can you suggest ways to level up with no budget and limited resources?
All right, I guess I'll start with that. So at first you got to determine that it's worth it, right? So you do want to do this. It's important for certain topics, preventing harassment, whatever, to do this. So, I mean, really, I say we get scrappy, right? Get using the iPhone. Think about, quality of the scenarios that you can develop, even if it's, using text and images, which can still be very powerful for a scenario type of situation. So what I'm saying is there are ways you can do it. You have to be a little bit strategic about it, but you don't need to get all fancy with, creating animations and everything else. But it's also thinking about the blend. It is thinking about, can you provide your managers with some coaching conversations that they can have? And every quarter, they're going to talk to all the folks, and they're going to ask 2 questions. They're going to ask 1 question that kind of supports that topic. So that could be another way to kind of, add some support or reinforcement to the topic. So think not just about how do you do this using technology to do it, but how can you do it leveraging an extra question that your manager is already having as a touch point with folks, or having at a team meeting, for example, or that kind of thing. Angelina, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion, where you can roll it up into a teach back or some other kind of leadership development meeting that you're having, or even we use it for an alley rally, right? So, we have specific topics from a higher level that we send out to the field, and then we ask them to provide their own topics for their daily alley rallies. But we like to give them maybe one of those questions being geared around what we're talking about for the month, and really about that compliance, so that they can engage in a different way and just have some open dialogue. It's not necessarily trackable. So when we talk about budget planning being done for the year, and what does that look like? What are some other ways that you can engage for the content that you're already providing, that you've already paid for in that avenue, and just talk about it in maybe a different way. The old school ways don't hurt either, right? So contests, in restaurant scavenger hunts, when we talk about PCI compliance, right? Things like that, really being able to navigate those things differently. We don't have to spend a ton of money. And I would also suggest that you probably have a lot of resources and tools maybe already at your disposal that we might just not use for that specific avenue of providing content, or we might not use for compliance. But it doesn't say that we can't think outside the box and using what we currently have a little differently to engage our team for compliance, or just other ways without spending extra money.
Okay, that was it for the compliance questions. I'm going to stop the recording now and end the webinar officially for anyone that needs to drop off. But anyone who wants to stay on, I can take you off mute and we can talk about the chat GPT and answer those questions as well. Now, thank you, Angelina and Bob. Let me just...
Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.